Hi there, it's Tom Cronin here from the Stillness Project. And I've been invited to share some thoughts and insights into this current challenging situation that we're moving through collectively on the planet. And I'll share it on a sort of macro perspective, which is a high level spirituality and sort of universality level, the bird's eye perspective, and also from a very practical level, which was how we can move through this in a grounded, mindful, conscious way and come out the other side, hopefully in a better way than where we were before we went into this. So in the Vedic worldview, which is a tradition of, or a body of knowledge that has been restored and preserved and passed on for thousands of years, probably in northern India, but it's now been dispersed across the world. And from the Vedic world perspective, we see the process of evolution moving through a cycle of creation, maintenance and destruction, creation, maintenance and destruction. And this happens in our lives, in our businesses, it happens in civilizations and also collectively on the planet. This process of evolving and then maintaining this new status quo. So it might be, for instance, like a new iPhone comes out, and that's the Brahma phase, the creative phase, where we see this new status quo, some new level of creativity and adaptability, an evolving process that unravels. Then we see the maintenance period of time where we see this period of the new iPhone being sustained as the new status quo. It gets established as this is the new paradigm. Now, the maintenance phase is very important to create this sort of new stabilized period of time. But if we maintain that cycle for too long and we don't evolve in that process after a certain period of time, then what happens is this sort of Shiva phase, with destructive operator comes in, and it starts creating some level of inspiration for change, because the process and the fundamental nature of evolution is things must evolve, things must change, things must grow. So we see this playing out of creation, maintenance and destruction. Creation, maintenance and destruction. We can look at this into our lives, our relationships, our businesses, civilization itself, as I mentioned. So the way I see it in the Vedic worldview is that we've been sustaining and maintaining a particular status quo for a very long time on the planet. And it's this idea that if I can get more, if I can have more experiences, if I can have an experience that creates some sort of trigger mechanism within me to make myself feel more fulfilled, if I can get more love, I can have a new car, if I can get more money, if I can get a more better investment portfolio, if I can fly around the world to some exotic resort. All of these things are what we call outcome-oriented fulfillment. It's an idea that externally some level of identity and some level of fulfillment is derived, and that's where I basically continue to look. And this continued maintenance of that particular model, that status quo, is been proving to be quite unsustainable on so many different levels. And what happens is that the universe gives us cues, it gives us messages that things need to change. And if we ignore that and we continue to maintain that status quo, that belief system, that paradigm, then what happens is, whether we like it or not, some force of evolution will come through, and that's that sort of Shiva destructive phase that causes some turbulence to change the current status quo and get us to start thinking about things in a different way. Now, we never know how Shiva is going to arrive. It can come in incredible shapes and forms. It's just really a force that creates some level of change to inspire evolution. And I think all of us could probably look at the way we've been living our lives and probably see from a macro perspective that perhaps we've been missing the point a little bit. And the process of Shiva is to help us be a little bit more creative, more adaptable, and possibly start looking internally and start exploring what can we learn from this experience? What can we do to grow from this experience? Can we find a deeper layer of truth in this and not get so distracted? So this is what I see as happening from a global, macro, universal perspective, that we're really being in this sort of process of Shiva, bringing about some very evolved and proactive process of change. Now, usually the process of change is not a comfortable experience. It can be quite challenging, very difficult, and quite confronting, but that's the whole point of it. If it was comfortable and enjoyable, then we just keep maintaining that status quo. And of course, under evolution law, that's not possible. So we can pull back from all of this experience and go, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. This is a shift for humanity to help us wake up, to understand the fundamentals of reality, to look at a deeper level of what reality is all about, and my relationship with the planet, my relationship with humanity, my relationship with myself, my relationship with spirit, the divine, God, presence, whatever you want to call it. So we can continue to dive deeper in this time and realize that there are profoundly rich lessons to be derived out of this very challenging and difficult situation. Now, on a practical level, if we bring this down to what we call in Sanskrit the Karmakar layer, that's the gross level of reality, how do we move through this complexity? It's definitely going to be very, very challenging. Many of my dear friends who own yoga studios and they run their business in conferences. A friend of mine who's a caterer for conferences. So many different businesses are going to come under immense pressure. This is going to be a difficult time. It won't last forever. It will be a short period of time, hopefully, I don't know, possibly a short period of time, that will require us to be very supportive and connected to each other. Yes, we've got isolation, but can we find some level of support for each other to get through this difficult time? We're going to have to learn to share. We're going to have to learn to sacrifice. We're going to have to learn to compromise. We're going to have to learn to give up a lot. And very few of us, myself included, have never been through a period of time where we have to give up so much. We just have gym memberships, and we have Netflix, and we have Spotify, and we have, Uber Eats, and we have Uber, and we've had this incredibly affluent lifestyle that we've become very normalized to. And we want a holiday, we have a holiday. We want to get Uber Eats, we get Uber Eats. We want to have music on our Spotify, we get music on our Spotify. And all of this is an expenditure. And so it is going to be a period of time that's going to really inspire us to learn the art of sacrifice. It's called yajna in Sanskrit, that surrender. And when we surrender, we can do it with frustration and anger and rage and loathing and fear and anxiety, or we can do it with a sense of love and devotion and reverence in the process. Like I said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. So learning compassion and grace and it's just going to be one of those things that I think can bring out the worst in us or bring out the best in us. And that's something that we're all going to have to choose. It's also a time for self-isolation and a time for quietness, to just sit in silence, to sit in solitude, to learn the art of being alone, to learn the art of how to embrace that beauty and richness that comes from stillness and silence. And if we think of what stillness and silence is, it's the absence of noise and the absence of motion. And what a gift that is for us. I think we're all kind of relishing the idea that we can have some time to just stop doing things and having noise in our lives. So if you're struggling with the idea of stillness and silence, the absence of noise and motion, then learning the art of meditation is definitely going to help you through that process. To just sit in silence is going to mean that you're going to get very bored, because your mind is going to constantly be looking for something that's very stimulating. So there's a multitude of ways that you can learn to meditate. And the simplest of all, just a simple technique, if you've never learned to meditate and you don't know how to meditate, is just to simply close the eyes and observe the breath moving through the nostrils. And as it moves through the nostrils, bring some awareness to the coolness of the skin around the rim of the nostril. And you'll notice there's a slight cooling effect there. Now, every time the mind drifts and wanders, and it will do that, and that's okay, that's the nature of the mind, but just keep coming back to that single point of the cool skin around the rim of the nostril as the air brushes in and out on that skin, cooling the moisture on the skin. And by putting your attention on this single point, you're going to help the mind stop that constant drift backwards and forwards, the ebb and flow to future and past, to excitation, to stimulation. And it's going to help your nervous system, your body, your mind find a centeredness and a calmness. This will really help not only just you find a little bit more peace and clarity in your life, but also help your immune system. When we're in fear and anger or constant busyness, our immune system's getting overwhelmed. It's getting fatigued. So this will really help boost your immune system and help you get through this time where we're going to need to be very strong vitally, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, of course. So I hope that helps. And if you'd like to have any thoughts or comments or questions, you can find me on social media at Tom Cronin. And I'm sure somewhere through this platform with these amazing people at Sound Life, you'll be able to have some connection with them and ask them for some support or some questions as well. Thanks for tuning in, and be safe, be well, and let's all get through this to the other side.